Hi everyone. The landscape of digital art is undergoing a seismic shift, driven by the astonishing new capabilities of AI image generation models. This advancement has sparked intense debate across social media and public forums, as artists grapple with the implications for their livelihood. The ethical troubles have intensified because companies harvested online digital art to train AI, without proper acknowledgement or compensation. Despite these challenges, AI has democratized art creation, enabling those without a traditional art background to make visuals quickly and affordably. How do we champion innovation while still protecting the rights and dignity of human artists? Keep watching to learn more. This video has 3 parts: economic agency, creativity and the human condition, and what society could do. Part 1, economic agency. If you haven't tried them out yet, there are tons of AI image generation models out there now that are trained on lots and lots of different images, all in different styles, and can produce artwork in the style that you like. You generally enter a text prompt describing what you want to see, and then you get a new image out of the system. Or you might take an existing image and ask for portions of it to be regenerated based on the content surrounding it. Again, like I said, there are plenty of image generation systems out there now, but probably the most famous are Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and Adobe Firefly. I actually use one of those systems, Midjourney, to create all of the thumbnails for this YouTube channel, but I'll talk more about that later. The easy availability of these systems, many of which are free, has dramatically lowered the bar for creating really good-looking images. Yet in the view of many artists, I think it's fair to say that it has cheapened their craft. I want to pause for a moment to note that this is a very contentious topic. It's one I'm not an expert in. I've just read a bit about it and asked a few friends what their perspectives are. I've tried to make this video as balanced as possible to go through all the different issues so that we can all see what a complicated problem this is. I'd like to ask though, if you're leaving comments on this video, that you try to keep it as civil as possible, regardless of what your perspective might be. First, let's talk about anger. Why are some artists really angry about this? You might have come across those images saying no AI art with a cross through it. I think it's very difficult for a lot of people to express why exactly they're so upset about this. So many artists will say something like, art isn't special anymore, which is hard to refute and hard to understand. Here's one YouTube comment I was reading. I just don't like the fact that painting just doesn't feel special anymore. Anyone can produce images now, and my ego doesn't like that. Haha. Now this is a pretty good comment, self-deprecating and everything, but there are a lot of far angrier comments out there. And the reason boils down to, people don't like being told, sorry, you can't do that anymore. It makes us feel like children. And it's a trivialization of all of the effort and experience that was put into learning a skill, like painting or drawing or whatever. It's also a huge economic issue. We've been trained to value scarcity, so we like to think that the things we produce are scarce because we know that they are then valuable. And if suddenly the internet is filled with a flood of AI-generated images, then it's no wonder that people feel like their value has been cheapened. But the economic issue is largely a construct, so let's dive into it more. We can start by talking about copyright. Stay with me. I know it's a boring subject because no one watched my copyright video, but I'll be brief. Copyright exists to define what is acceptable for other actors to do to something that you created. Can they copy it? Can they write it down? Can they make derived works? Can they give a performance of it? All those sorts of things. And the reason we care about what is acceptable to do with someone else's creative work is to ensure economic benefit for the creator or the publisher of that work. Okay, so copyright law tells us it's illegal to pirate movies because you're depriving the movie studio of income. Fair enough. But is it acceptable to take all the images on the internet, regardless of whether they're copyrighted or not, and feed them into an AI model for training? You might feel like this question has an obvious yes or no answer, but I'm here to say that it doesn't, because copyright is a social construct. Societies can define it any way they like, and copyright hasn't had to deal with entities like AIs before. So, of course, it doesn't define what should happen in this case. Should you let an AI system generate something substantially similar to a copyrighted work? And this is why there are lawsuits like the New York Times suing OpenAI, I think it was, because they're trying to establish a precedent that protects their own rights. Like I said, whatever society decides is the appropriate balance of rights between all the parties involved, that can become law. And importantly, this can change with the stroke of a pen. So while in the US you have lawsuits going on, in Japan they have already passed a law that declares that any copyrighted work can be used to train AI models. That's it. Full stop. You can use any copyrighted work to train AI. This is an attempt, by the way, to attract AI companies and talent to Japan. Because if your company is headquartered in Japan, then you're never going to face these types of lawsuits about, hey, you took my copyrighted work and used it for your training. People might believe that they ought to have certain rights under copyright law, which artists certainly believe and companies like OpenAI certainly believe. But again, there's no right answers yet because there haven't been, as far as I know, any changes to the law to incorporate this type of technology. You might ask, what exactly makes AI so different? Well, there are a few things. First of all, AI can remember input almost perfectly. If an image is in an AI's training data and you ask it to reproduce that same image with whatever description will call that up in the AI's mind, then in theory it can reproduce that image almost precisely. A human can't do that. If you do a study of an existing piece of artwork, you try to recreate it as much as possible, there are still going to be subtle differences based on your style as an artist. So the fact that this is closer to being an absolute copy is why people think that copyright law maybe should be implicated, because copyright generally deals with direct copies or substantially similar materials. The second big difference about AI is that it can remember everything it's ever seen, and it has seen the entire internet. It's one thing to ask a human to reproduce some image because maybe they've seen it, maybe they haven't. But an AI is essentially a savant that has seen everything. So it makes it seem more all-knowing and in violation of copyright when it can produce anything that you ask of it. And finally, the third thing that makes AI different is that it works 1,000 times faster than a human can. Literally. An image that took an artist 8 hours to create might take 1 minute to create instead for an AI model. And yes, it is common for artists to spend 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours on a single piece of artwork. That's a lot of time and energy spent into making something look good, which seems to become almost trivialized when someone can hit a button and wait 30 seconds or a minute and get something quite reasonable out of it. These three properties make AI different, but it's not really fundamentally different. You could have a human who is a savant with a near photographic memory that can reproduce a copyrighted work to an extreme level of detail. And if that human was also 1,000 times faster than other artists somehow, then you would have a pretty close analog. If you asked that human savant, please reproduce this copyrighted work, and they did it, is that in violation of copyright? One might say instead that you just shouldn't ask it to produce something that you know is copyrighted. Anyway, back to the bigger picture. I want to draw a comparison to early music sharing websites like Napster and later Grooveshark. These were basically music pirating websites. Anyone could upload an MP3 or other form of audio track to the website, and then any other visitors could download it for free. Their approach to the law was different. Napster just ignored everything and said, this is what we're going to do. And yeah, they got shut down eventually. While Grooveshark tried to say that, yeah, we let people upload things, but if an artist contacts us, we'll start giving them royalties. But that eventually didn't hold water under the law either, so they also got shut down. What these companies were trying to do is take the technology first and have the law follow. They were trying to establish new societal norms about sharing stuff, which, by the way, had really high barriers at that time. It was very difficult to purchase music online and have it be compatible with whatever device you were using. So their product had a legitimate edge, but they were up against a behemoth, because there was, and still is, a huge economic impetus behind music publishing companies. Sometimes this works, by the way. For example, for Airbnb, Uber, and Facebook, they all just started doing something that seemed outrageous, but that quickly became a societal norm. For music, the profit incentive has caught up now, and we have streaming services. Piracy declined substantially once it became pretty easy to stream, and the streaming sites had pretty large libraries of all of the material out there. People really wanted the convenience to be able to listen to anything, anytime. And sure, they wanted to save a few dollars as well, but as it turns out, that wasn't the strongest driving force. Compare that with what's happening with AI art right now. Copyright is being ignored, and any art piece online is fair game for training, according to AI model training companies. In other words, AI companies are trying to do to art what Grooveshark and Napster tried to do to music. Build the tech first, sort the law out later. But in this case, the massive economic interest is on the side of the AI companies, because artists artists don't typically have a ton of economic clout, especially individually. So at least at first glance, it appears a lot more likely that this attempt will succeed. The same way in the face of Facebook and Airbnb, we all said, privacy is dead, no one respects boundaries anymore, etc., etc. These big companies might get their way. In fact, they already have in Japan. Like I said, Japan has a big history of large companies having outsized power and legal power. So they were, to the best of my knowledge, the first jurisdiction to say, yep, training on anything copyrighted is totally fine. So where does all this leave the individual artists who are maybe losing jobs, not getting paid as much as they were previously? We'll talk more about that in the third section. But for now, let's dive into the human side of art. Part 2. Creativity and the human condition. Let's unpack that statement from earlier. Art is special. When they engage with art, many people feel a connection to the art or to the artist. You might feel like you understand that person really well. You might wonder what trauma the artist went through to be able to create something so awe-inspiring. Also, you might really like the artist's style and want to continue to engage with it. You might really trust that artist, in other words. Like when I really enjoy a book, I immediately read all the other books written by the same author. But when an AI has generated the art, the artist, the AI model, is basically a collage of all of the information from the internet, rather than being a single individual. Put another way, everything around us that has been created by a human was created by a discrete person. We know that they experienced the world from a single viewpoint, just like ours. They struggled and grew and gained wisdom. We can wonder, what did the artist feel? What was their life like? But AI is more like a continuous mind. It's not discrete. It's more like a hive mind, if you will. And it hasn't experienced the physical world either, not in the way that we have. So at the moment, it's operating with partial information. That's why it can feel like there's something off or missing with AI art. Can AI be creative? I have a friend, Antonio, who runs a YouTube channel about art. I'll link his channel over here if you'd like to go support a small art channel. According to him, AI exhibits great technical creativity. It follows all the steps in the recipe that you're supposed to follow that forms a good piece of artwork. The composition is usually good, the colors and contrast are usually good too, but at the highest level, the why of the artwork and what it depicts is sometimes mysterious. I think everyone that's used AI art generation knows this. With me, for example, I use midjourney to create all the artwork for my YouTube thumbnails. However, it's not uncommon for me to prompt midjourney many times and get perhaps 100 different images out of it until I land on one or two that seem pretty good. And then I'll still take those images, put them into an image editor, and tweak the colors and the contrast and put multiple images together and so on. And it's because I'm trying to get at that highest level of why. What is the story that is being told with this image? I think this is what people mean when they say that AI art doesn't have a soul. By the way, this example is one of the best uses of AI tools. If a human is still in the driver's seat, but the tool allows them to accelerate and go much faster than they could otherwise, while still allowing the human to use their creativity to make important decisions. That's combining the best attributes of human and machine. You're allowing the human to explore more possibilities of expression. And this is the core of art, is expression. What are you as an artist trying to communicate? What situation are you going to invite the viewer or the reader to put themselves in? When we experience really good art, we suspend disbelief and stand in another world. In other words, as an artist, you're trying to appeal to the human to think a little bit differently. And it's very difficult for a human to suspend disbelief and start thinking differently if they know that the creator wasn't a human. Anyway, AI will certainly begin to close this gap more and more and start understanding the why. So this is eventually going to become difficult, if not impossible, to distinguish. Or was it created partially by a human or not? It's also worth noting that when an artist creates, they learn and their style evolves over time. Take my own YouTube channel, for example. Older creations might make the creator cringe a bit, but it's part of their journey, and it's something that a viewer might value, being able to see you go through that journey. When a hive mind evolves, in contrast, everyone on midjourney complains how the new system isn't as good as the old one was. Part 3. What society could do. We've brought up a lot of issues in this video so far about how artists are feeling disenfranchised and how we're having to rethink our relationship with creativity and how a lot of big companies are trying to essentially force legislative change on the population just because they're moving really fast. But I do want to say that the status quo is also not very good. For example, I cannot produce art on my own. My hands won't allow it. If you're new to my channel, I have a medical condition called fibromyalgia and my hands get really sore after just a little bit of computer use. My creative expression of choice is writing and now also making videos, but the advent of AI art generation allows me to be really creative and create my own thumbnails. So this can really be a huge benefit for disabled folks. I don't like the term, but it democratizes art. I don't like the term because when companies say that, it's a marketing way of saying the end justifies the means. How did society deal with AI and copyright in other areas, like for music or for books? Well, music, as I already mentioned, is basically controlled by studio interests. The artist Sam Does Arts actually calls out music generating AI as being better behaved, because people that are training music generation AI are generally very, very careful to only use copyright-free music. But this is simply because of economic pressure. They know that music studios will go after them. And also, music is probably a lot easier to train AI on than art is. From a technical perspective, music is basically one-dimensional and art is two-dimensional. I don't think Sam Does Arts has the full picture here, though. For example, Spotify has tons of AI-generated music on it. They made news when they removed 10,000 tracks at once that were AI generated, but this practice has been going on for a long time, and it's a lot larger than just 10,000 tracks. Now, they're even generating AI content of their own. Why is this? Because they can avoid paying artists. They can probably give 10 cents on the dollar to an artist that has used an AI system to generate the music compared to a traditional artist. And if Spotify themselves has generated the music, then it's free for them. They don't have to pay a single cent. For books, well, books are a huge search space. There are so many words in a book. My novelist friend actually said he wasn't really that worried when ChatGPT first came out. He asked it to create a number of different short stories, and they were pretty good, but they were very formulaic as well. They all followed very similar plot lines, had similar characters, that sort of thing. Generating books doesn't really seem to be the focus of AI systems at the moment, so it's kind of not in the spotlight. But I know there's actually someone on our own Discord channel who has written several books in the past couple of months by using AI to help generate the text and also to generate the images and get his ideas out on paper much faster than would otherwise have been possible. So I think the situation is still evolving there as well. What should society prioritize for the future? Well, while artists are the first to experience overt displacement from AI, they're not going to be the only ones. More and more disciplines, more and more people are going to start to be affected by AI. They'll see large parts of their jobs automated. They'll see layoffs across their sector. Maybe they'll hang on to a job for a while until, of course, it becomes fully automated. Artists are being told that their skill and hard work needed to learn that skill is now pretty economically worthless. Apologies to anyone who's watching my video. Please, no offense intended. I'm just indicating what people are feeling, what they feel that they are being told. When people try to express this, they don't really know how to do it. And they say, I don't feel special anymore. What they mean is, I don't feel human anymore. I don't feel respected anymore. So we shouldn't take it necessarily as artists trying to place themselves above all other people. We need to work out a way to economically take care of at least some artists. Even the best are being affected by this. My idea would be an early implementation of universal basic income or some form of AI unemployment insurance. For example, maybe if you're an artist and you've lost your job, you can apply for 75% of your salary coming from the government for the next 5 years, something along those lines. While we are still in a highly capitalist environment, you could also try to reward people whose art sells really well. For example, you could match the earnings of all art sales 5-to-1 by using government funding, or establish an annual fund to support artists whose art has an outsized impact on the AI-generated artwork in the world. Perhaps by just comparing all of the input artwork with all the generated outputs and just seeing how common they all are. This video isn't primarily about economics, but people will inevitably say, that all sounds well and good, but how do you pay for it? Be creative. Taxes, debt financing, levies on companies that benefit from AI. We need to figure this out as a society because the problem will only get bigger. The status quo will drain human creativity and wealth. And remember, economic prosperity isn't about money, it's about wealth. And we're going backwards if we're disenfranchising large sectors of society, one after another. I want to mention a couple of references that I used for this video. First of all, if you're watching this within a few days of it being released, there's a workshop on how to be an AI artist on February 6th. It's put on by someone that I follow on Twitter who is astoundingly good at what she does. So I'll put the link to that workshop in the description below. Please check it out if you're interested. I already mentioned my friend Antonio's YouTube channel. He's a smaller art YouTuber, so please check out his channel if you're interested. And lastly, this video was partly inspired by a video by Sam Does Arts, and if you'd like to see more about the artist's perspective on this issue, I highly recommend you check out that video. It too will be in the description below. Finally, in conclusion, although many people have been excited because AI image generation has become so much better, it's having a lot of side effects for artists. Their economic agency seems to be getting called into question, and our own relationship with creativity and how closely tied it is to the human condition is also really a point of discussion now. AI companies have taken tons of copyrighted images from around the internet and used them to train AI models. That may or may not be a violation of copyright law, depending on who you believe and where you live. But I'm sure there'll be a lot more legislation about this type of thing in the future. AI is so different because it can remember everything perfectly. It can reproduce copyrighted images perfectly, and it can do so 1,000 times faster than any human artist. The connection that many people might feel to a piece of art or to the artist that made it is a really important part of why we appreciate art. And yet, when the image is created by an AI system instead, we may not be able to engage with it in quite the same way. Currently, AI has very good technical creativity. It can follow all the rules and make an appealing piece of art. But at the highest level, the why, the story that it's supposed to be telling, that can be a bit of a jumble. The artist typically has an idea of what they're trying to communicate. The AI model doesn't really yet, but I think it will in the future. Even now, artists are the first to be really displaced by AI, and we as a society need to figure out how to economically support them. Even if they're going back to school and learning a new discipline, that's fine, but how are they supposed to make that transition? What are all the young people supposed to do that are currently in an art degree? We outlined some ideas in this video, and there's lots more out there about post-labor economics. If you liked this video, please check out this previous one I made about how to prepare for a post-AGI world. It goes through a lot more of the considerations that we as individuals will have to think about when we're transitioning to a post-labor economy. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.